The next team I want to discuss is the New York Islanders, who had an atrocious start to the season, and a terribly atrocious start to the season. However, they went 6-3-1 in their last 10 games. So the question I want to ask you guys, is there genuine hope that they could turn their season around despite this atrocious start? Now, before I ask you guys, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of information about their team. They currently have a 12-13-6 record. So, I mean, they've won 12 games, they've lost 13, and they've lost 6 in overtime.
So they're 12
They
and
currently
19.
have 30 points in 31 games and are currently sitting 16 points out of the last wild card spot in the East. So what I want to ask you guys is, at about the halfway point in the season, are their playoff hopes done for? And if they do turn it around, will they be capable of going on another deep playoff run? I'm going to ask Adamo Ramoli, what are your thoughts on the Islanders, and is there a chance they turn it around, or is it too late in the season?
I don't remember if I said this, but I'm pretty sure I did. If we recall back to like one of the first episodes, and the Islanders were like dead last, and I think Mario asked me, "You think this team can make the playoffs?" And I said, "This team will make the playoffs, and I'm going to stick by that." The reason being, yes, you say 16 points out of a playoff spot. I see 9 games behind a playoff spot, meaning sorry, not 9, 4 behind Boston, 8 behind Washington, who's in the first wild card spot. They only have 31 games played. So, like, I get that they're way behind, but you got to remember, if they win literally 4 of those, they're only 8 points behind. And 8 points, we know, teams can go on a 4-game run in a week. Teams could go on a 4-game loss in a week. So I think a team they randomly get in. I don't even like their roster that much. I know Pulak, Pelech, and Noah Dobson, I think they're fantastic defenders. I think Matt Barzal is slightly overrated, but still phenomenal player. I don't really see anyone else on their roster. That being said, 2 solid goalies can get you there. And I don't know. Lou always figures it out. So I'm going to stick by it. I think he's going to do it. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't know why, but that's just normally how it works. And they're probably going to end up in the conference finals too.
Exactly. That's what happens with that team. I mean, I agree with you. I'm not really a fan of their roster. However, I'll give you that they're a very defensive structured team. And when you have Barry Trotz coaching, really anything's possible for that group. And they're the definition of a playoff team. I mean, I always give my rant about, the refs make it so those defensive teams end up having a better chance of going on a run because they're able to hit you and whatever. The Islanders are built that way to go on a playoff run. If they somehow squeak in, which I didn't actually realize that they had so much less games. So I guess that is a factor you have to consider. However, I mean, if they somehow squeak their way into the playoffs, which it's still going to be tough. But if there's any group that could do it, it is a group that's coached by Barry Trotz. And if they do squeak in, they absolutely have what it takes. They probably will end up going on another run just based on how they're built. They're single-handedly, they're just built for the playoffs. We're going to ask Evan Davis. What are your thoughts on their group?
Okay, I have zero hope in the Islanders making the playoffs, and if they do, they're not going to the Eastern Conference Finals because
I said that last year and the year before.
And the year before that.
I know. I know. I'm just saying, I don't because I just think all the teams in the Metro and the Atlantic just got that much better that I don't think that it would happen this year. I'm looking at teams like the Rangers that would get in their way. I'm looking at a team like Carolina that would get in their way. I'm looking at a much improved Pittsburgh Penguins that would get in their way. If it wasn't for a few blunders by Jari in overtime that one time and then just giving up stupid goals, they would have been past the Islanders. I'm looking at Florida, who looks hot right now. Tampa Bay, you still can't disrespect. And even Toronto, you can't disrespect. But I'm just looking at the remaining schedule that the New York Islanders have, and it's not pretty. They got to go through Toronto. They got to play Minnesota. They still got to play teams like Tampa Bay. They got to play. The Kings have suddenly woken up. I mean, I don't know what happened. They still got to play Avalanche. Vancouver still they got a tough road ahead. And the only way that they make the playoffs is if they somehow win 5 in a row or 6 in a row, and Washington and Boston both lose 6 in a row. And I just don't see that happening the way that Washington and Boston are currently constructed. And look, I feel bad for them because the Islanders are built for the playoffs, just not this year. COVID really derailed their season. I mean, I feel bad for them because I feel like this was a wasted year, and it's just unfortunate the way things turned out. But I understand that it's still like just a little bit over 25% into the season, but I just think the way that the other teams are trending right now, I think it's too late already.
And it's interesting. I just personally, I mean, I was going into this, I was bringing it up, kind of agreeing with you, but the fact that they have so many less games, I mean, well, I do agree. I'm not a fan of the roster construction. I think it is actually, if there's any team that's going to do it, it's that team that's
100%,
coached by a guy like Barry
100%.
Trotz. I think that's the argument I'm going to give. I agree with you. It's tough, and so many kind of stars have to align in order for it to happen. But I've written off the New York Islanders so many years in a row because I'm not a fan of the roster, and
Don't do it.
they consistently prove me wrong. So I
Yeah,
think
no, I get it, but I just think the
I'm
point
not going
that
to. No, you
no,
go,
I was
Will.
just saying I don't really think the 8 games in hand, or I'm sorry, yeah, the 8 games in hand on Washington and the 4 on Boston really matters because Washington has 21-9-9. Like they've already built a comfortable lead to the point where they're not worried about New York, and Boston I think is only going to get better. I think they're going to my prediction now is that they're going to trade for John Klingberg at the deadline. I think either one of Klingberg or Chikrin is going to end up in Boston. So that's just only going to improve their roster. So that's why I just don't see them in the wild card. And I just think the top 3 teams in the Metro and the Atlantic have already cemented themselves as those 3 teams. I mean, the wild card 1 and 2 can obviously change, but I think like wild card and those 3 teams have definitely cemented themselves.
Yeah, it's a valid point. You know, and I'm gonna ask Mario what his thoughts are, and then I'll tell you kind of my opinion on that because I think that's a very valid point to bring up. So Mario, what are your thoughts on the Islanders? Do you think there's any chance, or do you side more with Evan in the sense that their season's kind of done for?
Well, I side with a lot of points you guys all make. And I think this is the beauty of being the third guy to answer. Like for the first part, they're the best team that is able to do it. I'm looking at the standings right now. Like the Devils, they're closer, and I don't think they're going to accomplish it. The Blue Jackets are not complete at all. Flyers don't even mention their name. Like those are the other teams that they got to compete for. Even the Detroit Red Wings, if you want to throw them there, led by so much youth. This New York Islanders team is, I think, very round out. They're not a gross roster. They're not going to star-studded on paper, but they can get it done when they have to get it done. When their backs are against the wall, they're probably the best team, I would say, not in the league, but they're in a pretty good spot where if your back's against the wall, this team, you want them on the ice. I think Barry Trotz is a phenomenal coach, and he can get them there. I just don't think it's going to happen, and I don't want to rule them out because, again, they're the best team that can do it. Anything can happen. Hockey is hockey. And we've been treated to that over the last couple of years with them getting in, squeezing in, and then going on an absolute run. But like what Evan's saying, and I have to absolutely agree, like there's so much, and with the games in hand, obviously it plays a role, but like you need these competitive teams, those solidified top 3 teams to cut slack and lose a bunch in a row. And you need a couple of those teams to start trailing and losing 4, 5, 6 games in a row. And this Islanders team, they're a streaky club. They can go on a run. I don't have a question about them. It's not about them getting it done. It's about the other teams in the conference sort of getting their pedal off the gas is what I'm trying to say. It's a big hill to climb, man. It's unfortunate that it had to happen and they had to dig that hole through COVID and through injuries and all that kind of stuff. It's a shame. They deserve much better than what they're getting. I think they either going to come way too short and they're not going to get through because I can't see this year's playoff being dazzled with the blue and orange. Can't see it.
Like honestly, I'm a bit conflicted because I think both sides of the coin here are very much bringing up good points. I think the fact that they have games in hand is a positive sign.
It is.
It gives a sliver of hope for that group. However, I do agree that with I'd say the top 4 in each conference, like the top 4 in the Atlantic and the top 4 in the Metro, kind of starting to solidify themselves. I think the Islanders are very much going to have a tough time kind of climbing their way into that, despite the fact that they do have games in hand. I just think I do agree that the teams have sort of solidified themselves, so it's going to be a tough road ahead. But looking at the teams that currently aren't in the playoffs, if there's any team that's going to do it, it absolutely is the New York Islanders. Because, I mean, the other, aside from the Islanders, the other teams in the Metro, it's Blue Jackets, Devils, Flyers. Don't really see any of them crawling their way back in there. And then the teams that aren't in the playoffs in the Atlantic, I mean, it's the Canadiens, Senators, Red Wings, and Sabres. So I don't know. I think for sure the top 4 in the Atlantic solidified themselves. The Islanders are going to have to fight their way into a wild card if they want any hope of making the playoffs. But they're going to have to knock one of the Penguins or Capitals off. So it is a tough road ahead for them if they do want to turn their season around. I think the chances there's a sliver of hope, but I I think ultimately I'm going to side more with you guys. That was my opinion going into the show when I brought
Yeah.
up the topic. I think it's likely not going to happen. However, there is reason to believe if any group's going to do it, it is going to be them.